Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Joel, I think we can both agree. It's good to have the voice back.
It is. It really is. If you can hear me, I don't know what I just did to my phone here.
Well, that's all right. Take a moment. I mean, because not only are we trying to recover our voices, we're also trying to recover our technology.
Yeah, good point. There we go. I got you.
Yeah. But last week I lost my voice halfway through doing the Monday afternoon show. You lost your voice 2 weeks ago. You were just telling me that even now you're still kind of in the recovery.
There's still some stuff left over. I went down to Charlotte to see a game, a Panthers game, and the game was it was fun, but I was miserable the whole weekend because I wasn't feeling well. And
right.
I think it was that Monday afterwards. I was like, I just don't have this, and then my voice died.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
I don't know about you. In the midst of like the worst of the cold, there were some days where I'd go to sleep. I would sleep like 12 hours, which is ridiculously long for me. And then I'd wake up and I'd go over to the couch and I'd fall asleep again. Wow. I mean, I had no energy. I had no drive. I had nothing. It was so unlikely, unlike me.
Exactly. You're full of energy. So I was more tired. I don't think I slept that much, but I was much more tired than normal.
Yeah. It wipes you out. So if you have been going through this like we've gone through it, congratulations on coming through to the other side. And if you're in the midst of it, let me tell you, you will come through it. Be ready. It's going to knock you, especially when you think you're done. You think it's done, and it's not done.
Yes.
Yeah,
that works.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you realize that, it's and these viruses, there's nothing you can really do for them except wait them out, let the body heal.
Out. Yep. See what happens. It kind of ties into the topic today, because if you go into a power struggle with your virus, the virus is going to win.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to be in a power struggle with the virus. You want to let go and say, okay, all right, I'm sick for a bit. I can just I'll heal and then I'm better again.
Yes.
And that's kind of a good metaphor for how power struggles work in life. If you continue to engage in the power struggles, guess what? The power struggles will continue.
Absolutely. They don't cease.
Yeah, they don't take a vacation.
That's true.
But nevertheless, it is a challenge for us. That's why it's a topic, dealing with these power struggles, because of a lot of different reasons. But for all the different reasons that exist, it can be challenging to even overcome. How do you deal with the power struggle? How do you overcome it? I think partly because one of our first instincts is to say, well, how do I win this power struggle?
Sure. One of the main topics in one of the trainings what I do for foster parents is power struggles. Is one of the first things I start talking about. Kids, all kids, your kids, any kid, much less a kid from foster care. Power struggles actually lower you down to where they're at. So foster kid coming into a home is really at the weakest point in his life. He's coming into a person's home he doesn't know. That person owns the home. He or she has zero power. So they often will engage in arguments over silly things to subconsciously try to level the playing field. So when you reduce yourself to arguing with your child over something and they engage you in a power struggle, that's one of the ultimate traps as a parent, because you just start finding yourself arguing all the way. And in reality, the kids, that's just, it happens in all areas, all relationship. But in this particular relationships, it is really difficult to not do it. But once you learn that that's not the way to do it is not fight back, not argue, not, just, whatever you have to do to not engage with that, because a power struggle, it has no winner. It really just creates more division. It creates more stress. It doesn't mean you have to roll over if you're wrong. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just in general, when you get engaged in just a true power struggle, we end up, it drains both parties. It drains everything, and stepping back and allowing things to unfold is a much more effective technique.
one of the things, there are a couple things that I find to be truly fascinating about power struggles. Particularly, you mentioned parents and children, power struggles in family. One of the most fascinating things from my perspective is how parents take, it can seemingly take forever to figure out that the power struggles happen because of them.
Yes.
No, they want to believe that the power struggle is happening because the child is disobedient or it isn't minding them or something along that line. But they don't seem to realize, and it takes a long time for many parents to learn, that the reason the child behaves that way is because they learn from the parent that's how the parent gets what he wants.
Well, yeah, and also the children test themselves. For even the animal kingdom have power struggles. When a male lion reaches about 1 year of age, there's a gigantic power struggle within the tribe there, and the dad, the big male, is literally going to make that male leave. It's your time to go. Now the male's going to test him, and the young male's going to test him. If the old dude falls, and he now got his new pride. But if he doesn't, he's exiled, and he has to go find his own. And so the power struggle exists on all. Some of them are biologically necessary in some cases, but when you voluntarily are drawn into power struggles, and you don't realize that you're literally lowering yourself and energy down to a place that there is no winner. And it's real simple. When my son TJ, he had he was a great kid, but he adopted him from foster care, and we had a lot of challenges. And TJ, I don't know if you ever met a kid. I call him, he was a drummer. He was always drumming his fingers on the table, like boom, 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 boom. And one morning, just after a chaotic weekend, it was a Monday morning, he's sitting at the breakfast table, he's eating his cereal while he's drumming. And I know not to say anything, but it just, as a parent, I said, TJ, is there any way possible you can stop drumming? He looked me square in the face, and he took one more boom. And then he stopped. So I had a moment as a parent to either, I'm glad he stopped, or I could have got into, you defied me, blah, blah, blah. I chose I'm glad you stopped, because I didn't have to say anything. I just started about my way. But so for some reason, he needed to do that one extra boom. And I think he felt, well, I showed him. And in reality, I'm just glad he stopped. So, but that could have turned into its own situation.
And that can turn into its own situation for the exact reason that you described. Because if you had taken the other path, if you had taken the road of reason, I'll call it. I know I'm right. I'm right that you should not be drumming. So therefore, I'm going to argue you into it in some way.
Right.
It seems to people like that's a path that makes the most sense. I just find that to be fascinating, because the results are so poor going down that path. Yet it takes a lot to shake people off of that.
Well, it's a lot of it's historical. It's generational. That's how their parents did it. I know, watching my mom when we lived with my grandfather for a while, and when she grew up, I mean, there's an iron fist rule in the house. It's like, you do this, or we're literally, we're getting a belt out, and we're really going to take care of business.
Right.
That was sort of the way to do it. So even in adulthood, it sort of mimicked that. No matter how, he was an alcoholic, and no matter how bad he was, everybody's had to sit there and just say, okay, because he's the ultimate power. It's not a healthy struggle, obviously, but it's a struggle that took place often generationally. It just keeps going and going. And the idea of breaking that, and not that we don't need to discipline, or we don't need to put boundaries in place, but there's ways to do it where you can see. When my foster kids have moved into the home, eventually adopted kids, I readily accepted that we are in a drastic power imbalance, and they're coming in off the streets. They've been taken from their family. You're coming into my house with my rules and all these things, and so they're coming in powerless. And a lot of times they're seeking power, and I always understood that. So I would let 99% of stuff go until it became dangerous. I would then have to stop that.
Sure.
But anything that was, I'd like, they're just seeking some type of power. They're grasping at anything. And that's one of the things that, you know, if you can't handle that, you don't need to be a foster parent or adoptive parent. You probably don't need to be a parent, but you can't control that side of it. But it's the ability of me to realize, once I identified, he knows nothing. This kid coming to home doesn't know me. So any anger he has toward me is not about me. It's about what's happened to him. So
Yeah,
I don't need to flex on him, or I don't need to demonstrate my power. It's obvious. You know, I'm 225 pounds. I'm a weightlifter. You know, he was 70 pounds. I don't
yeah,
think
right.
there's a,
This is
yeah,
not what we call a fair fight.
yeah. And so I gave him as much leeway as possible, unless it became harmful, as I keep saying. But it still is understanding that it's a much better way to parent. I also, when you get in power struggles, there have been times. Here's a great example. When TJ was about 15, the police brought him home, and he had pot in his pocket. They
Oh, I love
pulled him
this
up.
story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. And so I quickly identified, when he pulled up, the cop. Now, I am director of this community mental health program.
Yeah.
Yeah, where people with drug addict kids go. So
Right.
my kid is at the basketball court skating and gets caught with pot.
Right.
So I told the cop, I said, well, just take him to jail again. We're not doing that. We're just not doing that. And so I knew the cop, and my ego was hugely bruised by that. I was embarrassed. It was, I'm not happy that he had pot, but he isn't the only 50-year-old kid that had a tiny little one joint worth of pot that he never even smoked. He tested clean on a drug test. It's just he had pot. So the whole idea, I went off. He had a phone back in those days, the Razor phone, flip phone, were the really nice phones. And
Right.
so I'd gotten him that. So I said, give me your phone. I literally broke his phone, the phone in front of him, threw it on the ground. I was rageful. I would never hit him, but I was rageful, and said, you get up to your room. You're a restriction for 1 month. And it took me a few minutes to realize, okay, that I just totally failed that test. It was, I get into a gigantic, and I wouldn't let him say anything. I just went off. And, and again, he went upstairs, he was compliant. So I went back upstairs. I said, look, I'm going to apologize to you right now before this goes any further. That was really inappropriate of me. And I explained to him that him having pot is not good. We'll talk about that. But the bigger issue is my ego was bruised. I felt embarrassed. I felt that people were going to be talking about me. And that's why I was so angry. That's not appropriate. That has nothing to do with him. I said, we'll go get you a new phone tomorrow. And, I'm going to let this one go. And this isn't going to happen again. And he said that was very fair. And then he explained to me that this cop came up, and the kid that had the pot handed it to TJ, and he just put it in his pocket. And the cop said, what do you have in your pocket? And TJ goes, pot. So, and the kid verified the story. So my point is, it was just this whole thing, but the power struggle to exist, the energy that was bringing to the table was just so inappropriate. I love this kid. I would never do anything to harm him, but yet that just not realizing how quickly I could get stuck in that. And power struggles can explode that way sometimes too.
There are a few things that I think are worth taking away from that. First and foremost, you did something that a lot of adults can't do, or find that they can't do. You were able to take ownership of your own feelings and experience. And
Yes.
that's a huge challenge for many. I have neighbors who have ongoing issues both with each other and with their daughter. And I mean, the walls aren't real thin, so I can't hear all the conversation, but the voices get loud enough, you get a sense of what's going on.
Sure.
It's amazing to me how over and over and over again, the daughter will act up because the daughter has learned that that's how to get what you want in life, is to try to exert power. And then the parents are absolutely mystified about that. And then they continue to do the same kind of behaviors that led her to do that in the first place. And they don't learn from it. They don't have that kind of self-awareness that you demonstrated. And so, I mean, I know you have the training and the experience and the background that have led you to learning that. But for somebody who hasn't learned that, I mean, what's it take? What's it take for them to finally wake up on that?
A lot of times they don't, and that's how it gets handed down generationally. A lot of times it doesn't really get handled. It just, she accepts that's the way it is, and then one day she'll parent that way. And that's how this stuff happens. It's having having empathy, understanding, and the people that we get frustrated with are in these power struggles are usually the people we love most. So
Right.
that's where it really and that's why they're so damaging, because the concept that we must win or we must break somebody to win
Yes.
is really old school. And by empowering people, and a lot of times, and you know me pretty well, I tend to uh, I learn through experience. I've done this for a long time. I see what works and what doesn't work. And I know that kids love structure. They do appreciate discipline. They do appreciate
Sure.
guidance. They really do. They thrive in that generally. I mean,
Sure.
especially a lot of the people I work with, ADHD brains really need somebody to do that occasionally. But also being able to allow some freedom in the individuality. Every one of our children, all three of my kids, have their own unique personality. They're going to be different than me. They're going to see things different than me. They had different experiences than me. You and I had different experiences growing up. So I have to accept those differences influence everything. And while my journey is my journey, this is their journey as well.
Mm-hmm.
So with my job is to keep them safe. My job is to try to depart what I can to them, and wherever we go. But at the end of the day, their personality is going to be theirs, and so we got to have some respect for that.
I like one of the things that you said, particularly, you talked about how there's this strong human desire and kind of an old school desire to be right.
Yes.
That somehow, if we're right, therefore anything that we're doing and saying is justified and therefore must work. What's really astonishing about that is how rarely it works. I mean, the track record is really rather poor about
Yeah.
being right, but that
Yeah.
somehow doesn't seem to stop a lot of us. We want to be right anyway.
Well, and right, and right is so much perspective based anyway. It's
Yes.
like if you were to ask me, Joel, what is the most efficient way using weight training to develop muscle?
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you something, and then
Sure.
you could Google it, and it'll be right. Also, there'll be 15 other things that are right. Some of them
Yeah.
are the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Because a lot you're not taking into account the bio individuality. In theory, really heavy weight, fewer reps to failure develops the most strength in general,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it also develops the most muscle mass in general.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are people that grow by doing much lighter weight with 20 or 30 repetitions
Mm-hmm.
multiple times working it. And that is because there's a bio individuality attached to it. So and this really irritates a certain group of people, and I love to do that, by the way. But
Gee, I wonder why. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just not your personality to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. Being right is so much perspective based. It really is. And the idea that somebody will argue, well, 2 + 2 is 4. Yeah, I'm not arguing things like that. But the should we be in Ukraine or not be in Ukraine?
Mm-hmm.
There's a million answers to that.
Sure.
There's a million answers to does this work or does that work? And a lot has to do, which presidential candidate wins will dictate how my world's going to be better for the next 4 years.
We know the answer on that one with you.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I clearly don't care who wins because I'm going to be
Nope.
fine either way. Yeah. So when we take into account that the need to be right is almost always attached to ego.
Yes.
And I also, and I think you know this, I love to be wrong. And I mean, what I mean by that is I love to learn. I love to be pointed out when I'm wrong.
Sure.
The idea that I can get something in my head and somebody correct me, I never take it personally. I'd love to say, oh my gosh, tell me more about that. I really do, because when I've been wrong about something or something changed, there was a perspective difference. I never forget what I was wrong about, if that makes any sense.
It
Like,
makes
oh my,
total sense to
yeah.
me. Oh yeah. I mean,
So
I've given the opinion many times here on the show that I learn the most from the people I disagree with,
absolutely,
and it really is true.
yeah. And so, when you're, and then you get stuff, and again, I'm not gonna spend much time with this, I promise. But then you get into like quantum theory.
Mm.
You're nothing's right.
Yeah. Or everything, depending on how you want to look at it.
Either direct. Everything's right or nothing's right. It doesn't care. You have diametrically opposed theories that are both right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but let's stop there, because
And
that's not the
if that doesn't upset you, nothing will.
yeah. That will get me down a rabbit hole. But my point is the ability, everything to me is about learning, experiencing. You're here for 80, 90 years or whatever we're here for. Arguing with people about being right is not one of the things that I want to go down for, is wasting my time on.
No, not really. No.
Yeah, because I love to hear people's opinion. I love to discuss religion and politics and theories and all those things, but I like to discuss them, not argue about them. I don't want to get into someone who, just goes on and on and on, and they're so adamant they're right, they will hear no voice of reason. I don't do that.
Well, I asked the question earlier about, why is it that people get so stuck on wanting to be right? And yet, by the same token, I went through a large chunk of my life where I definitely believed that it was important for me to be right. In fact, my life was structured around trying to always be right about things.
Yes.
And it took me a long time. It took me a lot of negative repetitions. That's the best way I can describe it. Negative repetitions, experiences that were negative from trying to follow that path. It took a lot of them before I finally said to myself, you know what? This isn't working.
Yeah.
This just isn't working. As much as I want to believe in this, as much as I believed in it all my life, it's just not working. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just have to kind of be exposed to it enough times and face it consciously enough times before you finally say, wait a minute, this doesn't add up.
No. Yeah. And a lot of people be exposed to it a bunch of times, and they don't care. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So proclaiming yourself right or arguing or to me, you miss the point, the value of understanding. And I want to know, when somebody disagrees with me adamantly, I want to know why. Not to argue with them, but what is your perspective that sees it that way? And you have so many different opinions, so many different backgrounds, and wasting time in power struggles, no matter what. They're not productive. They don't lend yourself to the positive side, or the using law of attraction to your benefit. In reality, it just sort of gets you stuck in minutia.
You've kind of touched on a really important point in another way too, which is how to get to positivity. You made reference to being positive a moment ago. Well, one of the best ways to become more positive, particularly for those of us, and I've been there, who found that difficult to do, one of the best ways to do it is to practice understanding the perspective of someone you disagree with.
Yes.
Just try, the old adage about putting yourself into the shoes of another person.
Right.
And it takes a lot of imaginating. There's a new word. It takes a lot of imaginating to do that. But once you learn to do it, talk about superpower. That's a real superpower. Because what it trains you to do is to find ways to see things positively that you didn't see before, because you're exploring new positive way or new perspectives that often you disagreed with, but because you now can see them through somebody else's eyes, you just found a way to be positive that you didn't know how to be before.
And also when I have a discussion with someone who I can disagree with about everything generally, but I still like to talk to them and I like to see the origins of how they got to what they believe.
Yeah.
And their opinion of that is often based solely on where they grew up.
Sure.
With religion, I can't discuss religion with someone who only believes that they believe exactly the only perfect way, because all they're going to want to do is defend that one way, and they're going to feel, and a lot of that's driven by, if you do convince me I'm wrong, my world is going to be upside down, so I will not listen to any voice of reason.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that is the ultimate truth behind the so-called truth?
Yes.
that if you don't believe what I believe, how did you phrase it? You said it really well a moment ago. I'm trying to recapture that phrase.
That was like 45 seconds ago. I lost it by
Sorry,
now.
yeah, it's the ADHD, I know.
Yeah, we're way down the road now.
But the way you phrased it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. It really describes how when we're in that locked in mental state, this is the only way life can be. This is the only way thought can be. It's first of all a very blinding way of living, because we
Right.
literally have to blind ourselves to other possibilities.
Right.
It's very restrictive. There's no room for discussion. There's no room for exploring. It's just my way or the highway, and that's it.
And
It's limiting. It's incredibly limiting.
Well, it's also threatening if you challenge that. It's like, what if I, deep down, like, if in North Korea, when somebody defects from North Korea, they have to be. It takes about 6 months of deprogramming their belief systems about their wacky belief systems over there that are, they're built on this bizarre thing that their leader is somehow, that short, roly-poly, fat dude, beat Michael Jordan in basketball. He beat Tiger Woods in golf.
Amazing.
And that he's infallible, and that and they believe that. So once you defect, and they feel like, oh my gosh, that's what's wrong, and they have a hard time believing that. But though he really did beat Tiger Woods, I saw the film. He beat Tiger Woods in golf. It's like, no, he didn't. But that belief system, when you say it enough, so when you violate a belief system, there's a subconscious response that I have to defend that, because me being wrong, maybe everything, like what if everything I believe is wrong? What if that's the case? And that's one of the things that people defend against, and they will not allow anything to remotely, when I was when I was younger, we were in Sunday school, and my brain was not going to. I was constantly being reprimanded and sent to the, to the pastor because of my crazy, what they thought was crazy stuff. But to me, it's a legitimate question. How did the penguins get to the ark? Why not? Tell me that.
Yeah.
How do you keep the lion from eating the penguin if it did get to the ark? I need to know that. And so, and they would tell me stuff like, well, yeah, no. And I heard a billion different reasons of why. But nonetheless, I was told my questioning was really because of a satanic influence. I'm like, I'm sure that, at 12, I'm sure Satan was very upset. I mean, really wanted me on his team at 12,
Yeah, it's not priority.
Yeah.
So it's a slow game, but I got to make sure that Elston kid is lined up.
Let's just take them out. And it was never, I didn't want to disprove them, but if they're asking me to believe this, these are valid questions. I'm not denying that there's a higher power, but some of the stuff you're saying just seems a little bizarre to me at the time. And answering it or asking the question wasn't defiance, but everybody would get so mad.
What you're doing is you're pointing toward the power of the question as being a way to overcome limitations in your own thinking.
Yes.
It's not just, I mean, people may be motivated to ask questions as a way to trap somebody else into a right way of thinking. But in the final analysis, what they're really doing is they're training themselves to think outside their own box.
And if you ask I literally ask questions for a living. I love to ask questions. To me, questions, I would not have what I have today if I didn't know how to ask questions the right way and follow the right direction. And there's a whole therapeutic concept based on what they call motivational interviewing, where you're just asking questions. And it's a really effective form, because asking the right questions, they eventually start telling you what you need to know, and it doesn't even have to be a relevant question. So many questions to be thrown in there, and so question asking is a good way to allow that and feel that, instead of demanding, what's your opinion on so and so. I asked, one of the things I ask when we know somebody, what's your opinion on the politics, or not that I'm wanting to argue the politics, but I just want to see, some people are like, I'm adamantly on this side and they're infallible. This is great. And then a lot of them are like, yeah, neither side really excites me. But nonetheless, it was never to create an argument, just to see where they're at and the rigidity. So when somebody has a belief system that is so rigid and that they're going to be really upset if it's violated, or you try to convince them any differently, that's going to be a different way to treat their addiction or whatever they're dealing with too, because they're going to be defending that addiction as it's a necessary event.
I love the story that you tell about how you use questioning to establish not just contact, but establish relationship with young people, usually young men that you're working with, usually the kids who are stuck in the foster care system.
Yeah.
I remember you told one story about the kid who you were trying to find a way to break through. You were having trouble breaking through, so you just kept asking question after question. You finally asked him what his favorite Beatle was.
Yes, it was number question. That's question 153.
153. Okay.
Yeah. And I very seldom, because it ends at 200, so I'm getting a little nervous at 153, and it gets more and more ridiculous. But that question, after asking 152 questions, getting a nod or ignore or and he's running out the clock. Then question 153 broke him. I said, "What's your favorite Beatle?" And he just started laughing, and I go, "Mine's Japanese." And he said, "Bro, why is that relevant?" And I go, "It's not. I just need you to do something." All of a sudden, we started talking. I broke him. I got him to laugh. We started having great sessions together. But it took 153 questions, and the last one being, "What is your favorite Beatle?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned the power of questioning from my father. My father was the consummate questioner. He didn't learn it from a book. He didn't take a course. He literally, I think it actually came out of the Great Depression.
Wow.
Because he was one of the people who grew up in the Depression, and literally they had nothing. I mean, they had the local firemen were bringing them Sunday dinner. That's how bad things were.
Wow.
And one of the characteristics of people who grew up in the Depression was that everything was dear. The slightest, you never threw anything out. The slightest thing could be useful later on. You always saved everything. And as a result, you were constantly trying to find ways to, shave a little bit of time here, shave a little bit of savings there, always trying to, and that's what questioning was for my dad.
Yes.
So for instance, if we needed to get the car fixed, he knew that fixing the car was going to be an expensive proposition. He knew he probably had the money for it, but because he had that Depression mentality, he was looking for a way to shave the price down, or shave the amount of time down, or maybe do it a little bit less expensively, or something along that line. And so he'd ask question after question after question. He would just be pelting the mechanic with questions, and eventually it would lead to some kind of result that would make him feel better.
Sure.
You have that kind of mentality, you're going to learn how to ask questions.
Well,
because you have to have this endless series of questions, kind of like what you did with that young man. And he could come up with questions endlessly.
Yeah.
To the point where you'd say, "Okay, enough, I quit."
Well, but when you want also the asking questions, and when I'm not when they're just stonewalling me or just ignoring me, but when questions are being answered, you're also developing a rapport, because I will agree with them, or I'll say, "Oh wow, I never thought of it that way. That was really smart. I didn't think of that." And I'm always fascinated by the way young people's brains operate. They have so much. My favorite group is just working with young people, because they don't have all that pre-programming that's so negative. Right. And so being able to, why do you feel that way, or what are you thinking when that took place? And it really helps you understand how their brain's operating. And it's often based on trauma or stuff that happened when they were younger. So they were and you get a sort of a snippet in that. And going back to the power struggle, one of the things that when TJ came to my house, when I adopted, he had nothing. When these kids had nothing, by the way, he had nothing. And so I had plenty, and we had a nice situation. And so when he got there, one of his belongings was a box of rocks.
Okay.
just rocks, not great rocks, not shiny rock, just rocks.
Just rocks.
Rocks. Some of them were different colors, and so when he got there, he was unpacking. I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, it's nothing. And I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Just some rocks I found." And I said, "Oh, okay." So a lot of people wouldn't have realized how that was valuable to him. It's something that belonged to him. Few things belong to him.
Sure.
So one of the things that we did, we went up to up in near Cherokee, North Carolina, where they have the Gem Mountain, and you can go in there and find some nice stones. So we went up there and I just let him pick out a bunch of stones. We mined it. You wash out all the stuff off. You get the good stone. And so he had a bag full of good rocks. So I said, why don't we get a display case and or just something that you can show your rocks off. These really pretty rocks here, and plus your rocks at home. He goes, those rocks at home don't mean anything. I said, they mean something. But so we had a rock display that included all the cool sapphires and crystals and his rocks. And
nice.
And he always said, those are just plain old rocks. And I go, no, they're not. They mean something to you. They're not plain old rocks. They're rocks that mean something to you. And the rocks that we found together and you found, that they mean something to you too. But one of the things that when he moved out, and he took the whole rock collection with him, the old stuff and the new stuff, and so it meant something to him. So I wouldn't make him throw those old rocks. You look at the rocks and go, God, just throw those rocks out. They're just rocks. But they're not just rocks. They meant something to him. So I need to understand that. So he knew I appreciated that. And one of the things we would do together is we'd be walking somewhere and I'd say, oh, here's a great rock. And he'd look at it and he goes, I don't like that one too much. It's okay. Or he'd like it, but we bonded over just finding really cool rocks.
Which is fabulous.
Yes.
You're also reminding me of something, because the topic is power struggles. And in power struggles, one of the things that happens quite frequently is a need to feel connection to what's important to us in our lives.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I mean, you were touching on it in a very positive way with him. But what happens so often in power struggles is that people feel like their own important things aren't appreciated. The things that are meaningful to them aren't appreciated. I think, for instance, I mentioned my neighbors who are often fighting with their daughter, and while I can't hear most of what they're saying, I can every once in a while some phrase comes through if they shout it loudly enough.
Yeah.
And I'll hear things like, well, your mother and I, we're always trying to give you everything. We in other words, I want you to appreciate the meaning of what it is that we do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if the daughter doesn't respond to that directly, the parent behaves as if the parent's been affronted, as if the parent's been insulted, which is not at all what was going on in the daughter's mind at all.
No.
But it's what was going on in the parent's mind. The parent felt the need to be appreciated for what it was that he or she was doing.
And the parent doesn't have the communication style or competency to actually ask for what she needs. Versus you should automatically do this because I do so much for you.
Right.
I tell parents all the time, foster care parents or just biological parents, your kids are not going to appreciate you feeding them. They're not. That's just what they're expecting. It's what life happens. They appreciate having a house, I'm sure, but they don't get up every day going, oh, thank God I got a house here. They get up.
They probably have better lives, but that's not what happens.
Yeah. And so, the idea of trying to make a kid feel bad because you don't appreciate them, and I know as a parent, there's sometimes, you'll think, okay, does this kid know what I'm doing for them? On some levels, it's human, especially I have a thing with Justin, and I come home and Justin and we're working on this, but he loves to eat cereal. And he'll eat a lot of cereal.
Oh, okay.
I have no problem with cereal. About as much cereal as you want, much milk as you want. I can come home some days and there's 9 cereal bowls in the sink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not doing that after 8 hours of work. I'm not going to. And I don't know, for parents at home, Fruity Pebbles, when they harden on the side of a bowl, may be the strongest force on the planet.
Yeah, they should turn that into a glue, I think.
I don't know what goes on with that chemical reaction, but you basically, you have to fill the bowl full of water, get it softened up again. It's this big event.
Yeah.
And I said, son, you have all cereal you want, but why don't you just rinse out your bowl and use it over and over again?
Oh, that'd be much too simple.
Yeah. And he's like, well, yeah, but I don't like them dirty. I go, well, that's what the rinsing out part is. Just really, and so we're working on that. That's a lot better. But, you come home as a parent, you're going, oh my gosh, the house is a mess or whatever, versus, none of this is a big deal. And I'm glad to be able to do this, but it does wear on you. It does wear on you, but also ask for it in the appropriate way. It's not like him and I had a really good conversation. I said, just tell me, could you understand when you're have your own kids, you go work out in the morning, you go work all day, might have a phone session late at night or late in the evening, and then you get to the kitchen and there's 9 cereal bowls who your son left there who hadn't really done anything all day. How would you think you would respond to that? And that's an effective way to just get him to what you're trying to do, not because he needs empathy for me. I want him to be able to see when he gets married or another situation, he can understand the other person is, acknowledge that they're doing what they're doing.
Well, I think it's important, and this is true regardless of whether you're dealing with children or adults or anybody. I think it's important to learn the skill of expressing in direct terms what it is that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because we as humans have a very strong tendency to express things indirectly and expect the other person to just kind of catch the drift. So
yes. Well, and that where you get into communication, the world's problems would drastically improve if we all would have direct, kind, non-aggressive communication. I know there are, and this is one of the fascinating things, and everybody I know, there are certain situations that people have a really hard time, and they may vary per individual, of actually being able to communicate what they're thinking. And I have I mentioned this a long time ago on the show. I have a friend. He's a doctor, semi-retired, very well-to-do. He describes it as a crush on his 43-year-old secretary.
Okay.
And he's never told her. He's divorced. His kids are grown, and he's never told her that. But they work very closely. He thinks she's amazing. Every day they're working together. And I said, have you told her? And he goes, no. And this has been going for a year now. And he goes, no, because I'm not getting any feedback that way. So I just don't want to mess it up. And I said, well, you're taking her out to dinner every week to and not Chipotle. I mean, nice places, and yeah, but I enjoy that. And the risk of the conversation would possibly ruin that. So I don't want to do that. I'll just keep it exactly where it's at so I can enjoy what I said, but you're never going to be able to. Does it bother you that you can't fully express this? And what would happen? One or two things. What if she has a couple kids, and he likes the kids. So what if you did express it and she said, oh no, I don't feel that way toward you. You're still okay, but I still want to keep our friendship. That's one option. She could say, I would never think you would want to date me with my kids, and that would give him an opportunity. But what if she does meet somebody, not even knowing you're interested, and there's a million things that could really disrupt this. So what would it hurt to communicate? And he said, because the chance that it ruins it outweighs any potential benefit. And so he's gone on for a year now, basically being in love with a secretary and just won't talk to her about it.
And I appreciate that story so much. I know I've been through it myself. I'm sure many of our listeners have also been through it. It's an amazing thing, an amazing tendency that humans have to justify not communicating. That's basically what he's doing. He's justifying not communicating.
Yes.
And we do it based on what we imagine to be the unhappy results that come out of the communication.
Yes.
Emphasizing the word imagine. In other words, we don't actually have evidence that that's the way it would come out. We've simply created that in our imagination, and our imagination is what's stopping us.
Yes. And, I talked to him about a scenario a few months ago. I said, what if she has waited for 8 months for you to say something? And she says, I guess he doesn't care that way.
Yeah.
You know, what if there's what have you even discussed the narrative? Can we come up with a way to even, you know, even just touch on it to see that it, and he's like, nope, it's just too much of a risk. And I've just decided that I don't want to lose this. And he's happy in it, I guess. I mean, he has companionship, and you know, I've seen them together, and you know, I'm not really good at really picking up on a lot of things when it comes to those kind of things. But you know, I can't imagine she's showing up to dinner. She's always dressed nicely. They're going out, you know. There's just some signals there that it would have to be worth exploring. And you know, I always give the caveat too when I'm discussing these kind of things. I have absolutely ridiculously bad relationships, so I just like to put that out there.
I personally want to disagree with that. I think you're very good with relationships. You just don't give yourself enough credit.
Yeah, well,
I
maybe.
seriously do.
Yeah, well, you know, you got this, you know, what am my communication problems are not necessarily fear of communication, but you know, when I talk to people, I think, okay, is this a 50% filter person? Because nobody's going to handle 100% of this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's way too much stuff. So, yeah, there are times where I just sort of like, okay, I gotta, not because of the topic of the conversation, but just too much, you know. It's like, yeah, I get that. I really get that.
I remember when, of course, I'm divorced now, as you know. I remember when I first met Louise about 26 years ago. We were together for a few months, and within a year, we were engaged to be married. And at that point, I was still engaged in social dancing, particularly swing dancing. And I remember going to a dance where I was informing people that I was engaged and that Louise and I were going to get married. And I remember dancing with a few partners and telling them that, and seeing absolute looks of shock on their faces, including one who I'd always had a real soft spot for, but I never asked her out. And I realized after the fact that if I had asked her out, she would have said yes. We probably would have had a good time. Who knows what it would have turned into? But because I hadn't, it was not something I was ever going to find out. The only way that I did find out was because I told her I was now involved with this other woman. And the look of shock on her face told me that, oh, wait a minute, you kind of skipped over an important piece of your own development right there.
Oh, that
was an eye-opening experience. I mean, obviously that never turned anything because I married Louise, but that was a real eye-opening experience to see, wow, I could actually be creating these false scenarios in my own mind about what this other person is thinking about to my own detriment, not even realizing that I'm doing it.
I promise you, we all do that on some level. We create, you know, the idea that you look at situations and you have your own narrative of where to go. And I wonder if we ever had a day where we could just, you know, a social experiment just to tell people exactly how you feel about whatever. And, you know, and there would be no repercussions, you know, just what does that look like? Is it, you know, and, you know, most people are like, look, it's just not worth all that. It's not because there's no way he or she is thinking that, or, you know, it's just, there's so many factors involved. The human brain's fear of being harmed or emotionally damaged exceeds sometimes the need for connection or love. I would rather not, this is a statement, many people say, I would rather the thought of somebody I'm really close to rejecting me and then it's all over is far scarier than let's just keep it where it's at.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, because of that experience, I also know that even if we do hide in that way, even if we do hide behind our own unwillingness to open up about things like that, particularly uncomfortable things that could lead to us being disappointed or hurt or angered or whatever, frustrated. Despite our efforts, life still has a tendency to come back and teach us in ways that we didn't expect. That's what happened with me. I got a real big surprise when I found out that this one woman who I was interested in was probably interested back, and I had I hadn't allowed myself to believe that.
Well,
but once the universe kind of conspired to tell me, hey, look, this is what happened, I noticed it. I mean, I could have just skipped that, right? I could have just pretended that the incident didn't happen. but
Right.
I didn't. It made an impact on me. So the universe found a way to tell me, even though I wasn't ready to be hearing it.
Well, and that's another piece that you're, like a lot of people, because they're so shut down to even picking up on the clues, or
Mm.
the so whatever it takes. So, oh no, I'm not getting any vibe back, or I'm, in you're getting vibes back, you're just ignoring them.
Ignoring them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and a lot of people don't have that ability just to sit down and say, and this happened, and this is one of those things that make it happen. Many years ago, I was in South Carolina and I was running a treatment center there for gamblers,
Mm-hmm.
and we had I moved up from Florida to run it, and we had a client there that was actually in Florida that moved up to South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So when I arrived in South Carolina, it's female client. She was really nice. She was a nurse. We were. I thought we were really good friends. So I knew nobody there, and we would go eat. We go eat. Um, one time I remember going to the movies just because I didn't know anybody there, and I was just in the process of building friendship. So this was just me and my friend going. She was
Right.
really the only person I knew. So this went on solid for 6 months. I thought nothing about it. We had a great time. We laughed and all that. So this one day I get a fax. This shows you how long ago that was. I get this fax, and it's this long letter from her.
Oh my.
And she said, I just need to let you know how I feel. I've become very close with you. I have fallen in love with you. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Wow.
And it was like I was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, professionally, number one, professionally, it's taboo. That would be pure taboo for me to ever consider a relationship with somebody that I have been in a counseling situation with.
Sure.
Second, I really thought of her as a very good friend. I really did. It just, maybe because of our therapeutic relationship, it felt like a big power imbalance. I knew so much about her. She didn't know that much about me. So I just really, but it literally, I said, look, I am so sorry that I don't feel this way. I didn't realize that this was taking place. I wish you had mentioned this earlier. We could have, and I said, please let's not run everything. I still want to. It was the last time we ever spoke.
Oh yeah.
And I tried to follow up a couple of times. She quit coming to our group. She eventually left town, and it was one of those things that it was so sad. And I was so clueless about it. There was no intent on my part to ever harm her or any. And a lot of times too, when you get into deep therapeutic bonds with people, there's a term called transference and countertransference,
Right.
where you can actually become a mesh with the therapist and mistake a lot of that energy for love. And because you're talking a bunch of intimate stuff, and it can be mistaken pretty easily. So
Sure.
I have no idea whatever happened to her, but that was a very devastating thing. I lost a very good friend in that part, and I unintentionally was involved in in that situation. I wish it didn't get there. So you can see where the fear of saying that was. So I'm sure along the way she probably would have said, "See, I knew better to say anything because I lost all that."
Right. Right. Interesting. Also, I mean, this is a bit speculative because obviously I don't know what was going on inside her mind, but I'm going to speculate a little bit that she had built this up for such a long period of time that if the final answer was anything but you being in love with her, she was setting herself up and she was going to be devastated no matter what.
Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with a term called limerence.
I'm not.
Limerence is often mistaken for love. Limerence is an obsession. It's you become limerent. And by the way, I want you to be the first one to hear it from me because that's about to be the new catch cool word. It's been around forever, but limerence. It's been around forever. So, but now it's being talked about. There's a book being written about it. But so now we'll all know what limerence is in 2025. But I'm giving you and our audience a heads up. That's coming.
Thank you.
But limerence is it's not love, but it looks like love. It's where you obsessed. You think about somebody every day. You have these scenarios painted, and it can become it's almost like intrusive thoughts, and it can really take over your life. You become obsessed, and it's never really about love. Even like in this case, she was in limerence with me instead of love, but that wouldn't help her situation. And I wouldn't be able to say, oh, don't worry about it, you're in limerence.
That's just dismissal. That wouldn't help. No.
Yeah, that wouldn't help at all.
Yeah, I don't think there was really anything you could have done at that point. I mean, that was just she had already worked herself up. But that's really what my point is. She had worked herself up. We all do that. It's not like she's alone in that.
No.
I've done that many times. I know other people do that too. It's very easy. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to become limerence, but it's very easy to build things up in our minds to the point where they become dramatic. Not just dramatic, but powerful themes that keep playing over and over and over again.
Well, when you wake up every morning and you think, man, I found my person. This is it. We got this great connection. We're going to go have lunch together. Maybe we'll see a movie this week or whatever. And she was always so, yeah, let's go. And it just felt, we laughed about, my humor is ridiculous. So she laughed at that. So in her mind, she really created this as a reality. There wasn't going to be an answer other than you're in love with me, or I'm done. I'm out of here. It's over. And I, sort of naive to the whole thing, didn't realize it at all.
Yeah. Well, the universe does find ways to deliver stuff to us, even when we're not there yet. It's amazing.
Yes. And so it really does, it does affect that. But when we're, the fragility of our emotionality, of the emotions, and particularly when people, a lot of people I deal with addiction. When you're in heavy addiction, you emotionally stop maturing, during your addiction. So if you're 18 when you got into your addiction, you're emotionally in a lot of ways 18. If you do it for 20 years, you're 18 emotionally, right? And so when you get in recovery, you are still emotionally like a teenager and fragile. So people have a lot of people don't do a lot of work, doing more and more now on sort of that understanding of connection and intimacy and all that stuff, where you can understand it a little better. But it's scary, and being rejected is one of the biggest fears of all people. And life would be over. That I've seen a lot of the young men I work with. They'll have that first love, first breakup.
Sure.
And it is brutal. It
is.
And it's compounded today because the girlfriend you had from 11th grade to first year of college, she breaks up with you. You weren't expecting it. And you're friends with her on social media, and you see all the cool stuff she's doing on Instagram. And so now it's compounded even more.
Yeah. So you get it rubbed in your face, which is always lots of fun. Yeah.
So
it's kind of a funny thing, though, because our original topic is power struggles. And so the thought that might enter into a listener's mind is, well, what does this have to do with power struggles? And actually has everything to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because what this really points to is what the true source of a power struggle is. We have a tendency to think that the power struggle is with somebody else, but really the power struggle is with ourselves.
Power struggle is internal. It's always internal. The illusion that you're in a power struggle with someone else is it's obvious that you're participating with someone else, but it's going on in your brain. All this is the internal power struggles, the operating system of our brain. I love my brain. I really do. With my ADHD, I very seldom take medication. But I do have medication if I need, especially if I got to be really focused. So I got a lot of stuff I need to do. And so I've been, this morning I took my medication for the first time in a while. And I'm fascinated how organized my brain is under it. But in fact, I don't like it because it's too organized. It's too, I don't get the full benefit. Today, I actually work from home. I'm trying to get a lot of my stuff done. My ultimate goal in early 2025 is to be able to get out of my house here, sell it, and just going through the paperwork. And, you've been here 12 years. I'm going through all the stuff and I'm organizing it. So I spent today doing that most of the day, which is really cool to be able to get done, because that's a project moving forward. But I needed that medication today to be able to do it, and it worked, but it's not how I like to feel.
But the fact that a power struggle is truly an internal struggle
Yes.
that we tend to associate with other people, but we're actually better off if we can associate it within ourselves.
Once
Because
you
then we
understand
realize
my
what the true
power
nature
struggle with me, yeah, everything with me is internal. Any emotions that I'm having, I'm creating.
is.
And we create stories. You can hurt your own feelings. You
Sure.
can perceive rejection. I have come to work really hard on not expecting anything from anyone. That sounds sort of negative when I say it, but not really. I I I want my I don't want to hurt my own feelings by expecting somebody to do something that they're not going to do. They
Mm.
don't even know I'm expecting it.
Beautiful way to phrase it. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to hurt my own feelings by expecting something from somebody else.
Yeah. And that's not a negative. It's just simply how would you be able to even understand that,
Mhm.
other people don't know what's going in your brain, but yet somehow you're expecting them, they should.
It's always one of the most amazing things to me how we believe we know what's going on in somebody else's mind. It's amazing how often we're wrong about it. I
Oh,
mean,
I know, I'm really good with my clients, but I know in my personal life, I'm very, especially with somebody that I'm connected to, or a relationship, or I'm really bad at that because I have an emotional connection to that, and I don't know what's going on in their mind, and it's different when it's professional. I see it differently.
sure. Yeah. That's one of the big challenges we humans have is learning how to navigate that fact. First of all, coming to terms with it, recognizing that it's true, that I really don't know what's going on in somebody else's mind. And then figuring out how to navigate my own life, basically being okay with the fact that I don't know what's going on in somebody else's mind.
Yeah.
That's a skill all by itself.
Yeah, and when you look at what's going on, and you try to imagine what other people are thinking, it was almost that since we are looking at it through our perspective, somehow we must be involved in what they're thinking because we're thinking. So the reality is, what if they're not thinking about this at all? What if
Yeah.
we're not involved in this? But yet the brain wants to. You can't really not think it's involving you when you're the one filtering through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we've covered this topic beautifully, and we've honed in on ultimately the root of it, which is that power struggles are internal to ourselves.
Yes.
I think those of us who have navigated along this conversation that you and I've had today, if we can come to that conclusion that we are responsible for our own power struggles because we're the ones who created them in the first place, that's the true root to freedom right there.
The taking that step, even we are responsible for us and our thoughts, even a broader category. And when you understand that this category, the idea that and I say this all the time, so you hurt your own feelings. I mentioned it earlier. Oh, so you thought about this and you hurt your own feelings, and none of that's remotely true.
Okay.
Or filling in the blank of why somebody didn't call you back or text quickly enough.
Right.
You filled in a bunch of negative stuff and you hurt your own feelings.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all internal.
Well, I don't know what's going on in your mind, although at this time of night, I do know what's going on in your mind because it's time to go get the eggs.
I got to get the eggs.
I can always count on that one.
Yes, yes.
So thank you very much. This has been very enlightening, and I look forward to talking to you again next week, my friend. It's going to be good, I'm sure. Whatever I don't even know what the topic's going to be.
We don't know, but we'll do a great job with it. Always good. I'm glad we're back in rhythm now. We're both feeling better. Have a great week.
You have a great week as well. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Good luck, everybody.